I'm here with Valerie Jones of Valerie M. Jones Associates. And Valerie, thank you so much for talking to us today. You've been in this business a long time, and so I know you have a lot of valuable information for people who are interested in getting into consulting with nonprofits or who might already be there.
Yeah.
So let me just start right off here. Tell me, what kind of consulting do you do with nonprofits?
We're consultants in philanthropy, which means we do fundraising, sponsorship, some strategic planning, grants writing, basically the whole range of philanthropy, except for not events.
Okay.
I don't do events. I don't do windows and I don't do events. But we have wonderful colleagues that we can refer to that.
That's great. I really know that feeling. Events, I admire anybody who can pull off a good event. Yeah.
If I have to pick the color of napkins with the ladies for another hour, I'll blow my brains out.
Yeah, okay.
I just can't do it anymore.
Fair enough. So have you worked with for-profits? I know we talked a little bit before about your experience there. Maybe tell me how that worked. What's the difference?
Well, what you'll find is that there are the same kind of people across the board. There's wonderful leaders in nonprofit and not so wonderful. There's bullies in for-profit and bullies in nonprofit. So humans remain the same.
Right.
However, I will say that the focus on getting every dollar, especially I work with a couple of large communications and manufacturing firms, companies, global entities, and often I would say, well, like part of my job is to figure out how to generate money that they can then give away. Okay. Either for sponsorship or...
So within the philanthropy work you already do, that you're helping them with that.
So I help them design a sponsorship program that will generate money that they can use. And finding, what I often do is I go through the whole food chain to find an opportunity. So it'd be like, well, you have this strategic partner with an airline. If they could, increase their amount by this much, and you could take a half of that percent, and you could work together, and you could both claim the wonderful sponsor of the work you're doing, cause marketing. It's like, no, we can't take a penny. We've negotiated with that airline down to the absolute cent, But what I have been successful in doing sometimes is getting those strategic alliances to kick in money to my client. Okay. Because if there is a shared opportunity, even if they've broken fingers, sometimes just as a way of, no,
it's fine.
As a way of,
it's a rough business.
As a way of those vendors, like if it's, Hasbro trying to get toy rights to a dinosaur movie or something like that, or McDonald's getting the, the plastic stuff that you give away, it's a goodwill gesture. That, to help the entity that they're trying to cut the deal with or solidify their relationship with. And believe me, like a fraction of a cent of Jurassic Park toys can generate, hundreds of thousands of dollars for paleontological research, which it has.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah. And that really makes a big difference to a nonprofit who, in an area, I happen to know a little bit of paleontology, and I know you can't find money for that.
No,
so that's
it's really egregiously, it's like every kid loves dinosaurs, but it's egregiously underfunded. So exactly. A tiny bit of a collaborative partnership can make a real difference.
Wow. So how did you get into your business? I mean, and I have to preface this by saying I quote you all the time on this, because so how much you told me one time when I started out that you worked hard for yourself before, or you worked hard before. But go ahead.
So what I sometimes tell people is like, when I was starting the business, friends sent me books about like how to start your own business and it was like, oh, and you're going to work evenings and weekends. It's going to be so hard. After being a development director, running my own business was like a walk in the park. It was like so much easier. I was really just responsible to myself and to my clients. And I will say that what I love about development is that we get to learn. I'm very curious, and you get to learn a whole new body of information with every organization you work for. So I did, before I worked for Freedom Theater, I didn't know the whole canon of African American plays. You know, before I worked for the Philadelphia Zoo, I really didn't know about all the lemurs of Madagascar, and that was before the movies came out.
Fair enough.
So you get to learn all these things, but even so, as a development director or a vice president, there is a certain cycle.
Right.
You know, there's the fall appeal and the spring appeal and the gala and the schedule of, grant proposals. And at one point, I just was in a situation where to take care of my family, I needed more flexibility. And so I decided to start my own firm.
Right.
And it was great because, juggling the special needs children's schedules and stuff like that, where I was able to work, late or around other things and to schedule my own time. So I think for young parents especially, it can be a really great choice.
Oh, that's really cool. That's good to know. I mean, because people come into this with all different reasons.
Right.
And that's an important one, whether it's child care or elder care. I find folks have that issue.
Yeah, we're the sandwich generation right now.
Well, I get that.
And that's also one reason why I often recommend to younger professionals, get to be a director before you take parental time or you cut back on your schedule.
Right.
Once you've been the director, a development director or the head of a department, you can come back at that level. But if you never reached it, you kind of go back having to earn your way there.
Right.
So, if I think it makes a difference.
That's
so good. Get the title first if you can, even if it's for a smaller organization.
Right. And then people will take you seriously if you decide to re-enter.
Right. Exactly.
And that's something too that I've observed, and I think you may have as well, is that folks, some people, now you've been in this business for how long?
I was a development professional on staff for about 15 years, and I've run the business for 18. So about half in the trenches as a staff member and half running my own firm.
And yet you and I have seen people come in and out. That they are a consultant for a bit and then turn that around.
Right. And I mean, I've always said, my business exists to serve me, not the other way around, and I'm not one of those people who said, I'll never work for anybody else. It would have to be really interesting. Because one thing I love about the consulting, and you probably do too, is I love just throwing myself into new situations all the time, and I learn as much from my clients as they do from me.
Well, what you were describing before, I was thinking of as Forrest Gump moments.
Elaborate on that. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you just kind of accidentally find yourself in a situation that you suddenly are able to turn an organization one way or another. But it wasn't that was your intent. It's just that's what happened and you learn a lot and they learn a lot.
Slightly more intentional than that. But no matter, and for the consultants, no matter how much due diligence you do on the outside, no matter how many people you talk to, you never know the real deal until you start working with a client.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So what describes your ideal client? And how did you come to that?
Okay, two good questions. First of all, my clients, although we've worked with much larger organizations and different kinds of organizations, our clients are arts, culture, and environmental organizations with budgets between about $1 million and $5 million in the Mid-Atlantic region. Okay,
so that's really in the panoply of nonprofits, that comes down pretty sharply.
Yeah.
How did you get there? Did you make mistakes along the way, or did you just say, that's kind of where you wanted to be?
Well, I mean, that's where my practice had been, kind of up to that point. But where I came to the size is that it's the most interesting and the scariest and most dangerous, I think.
All right.
Because if you're an organization with a budget under $1 million, you can stuff envelopes with your friends, you can kind of bump along.
Right.
If you have an operating budget of more than $5 million a year, there's usually something to cut if you have to.
Right.
But nonprofits making the transition from $1 million to $5 million operating budget, there's often a lot of risk. They have to learn to operate in a different way.
Sure.
They go from, being so excited to have anybody ask them to do anything, and then they get a plethora of opportunities, and then they have to be really strategic and start learning to say no as much as they say yes.
And I imagine that's where a founder, if that's the kind of organization, has to change their mode or they're done.
Or the organization has to grow beyond the founder.
Right.
So I just find, I don't know what your experience is, but I found that range is really fascinating. The other reason for staying I mean, that's actually a lot of different kinds of groups.
Oh, yeah.
Especially for, some of my colleagues are in higher ed their whole life,
Sure.
in different colleges or universities, but still. But it's really hard. We have so many changes of staff on both sides. So to know all the funders in those groups in a certain region and all the, a lot of the leading development and executive directors for all those kinds of groups. And Philadelphia is particularly rich. And the Mid-Atlantic region in cultural organizations and environmental organizations. So just keeping track of the players for that group is enough for me.
And
we're a boutique firm. We're not big, and I never wanted to be.
All right. Well, that's good. So in your opinion, what's the best way to find a client? If somebody were to come in and say, "How's this start?"
One thing I developed was an initial client interview.
Oh, interesting.
And there's certain questions, and sometimes it's just a phone interview, sometimes it's in person, but I have a set of questions that I ask any initial client. And my goal is, I'm very picky. I turn away about, 3/4 of the business that comes to me.
Okay.
And that's because choosing your client is really important.
Oh, that's fascinating. So people, the phone rings, somebody calls.
So the phone rings, and my job...
But you're not saying, "Ooh, there you go again."
No. My job is to help whoever calls.
Right.
So I might be or might not be the right person.
Okay.
If they're just calling for a copy, I might say Matt's really the right person. But I have helped them to get the right help.
Yeah.
Right? You know, and I can't do that unless I ask certain questions.
Sure.
So I have an interview, and I keep those notes. And often that's the basis of a proposal. If it seems like I'm a good fit for them, then I've asked the basic questions. What is it you want to accomplish?
Okay.
What are their specific dollar goals? Is there a deadline? Do you need to raise a certain amount of money by a certain time? Is this project grant funded?
Okay.
And if so, can I have a copy of the proposal so I know what the deliverables are?
Right.
That you are going to have to report on in a year. You know?
Right.
So, and who's the decision maker, and what additional information you have. I talk a lot about work style and fit because I'm a very comfortable, casual, pretty frank person. Some people prefer a more formal relationship.
Right.
I also will not usually take a client unless I've spoken to both a board member and a staff member.
Right.
I mean, it's institutionalized to a certain extent with state registration, but I don't like to walk into a situation, or if I am walking into a situation where it's an us versus them, staff versus board, then part of my job should be to help to unify them, but you've kind of got to know that it's there. So I usually ask at least one leading question if it's a board member calling about the senior staff and vice versa.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because I think too many folks don't, in essence, screen their clients because they just want to get clients and aren't
and we might talk about this later, but I find that that my best marketing is a delighted client. And I will bend over backwards. I've given $40,000 in pro bono to one client over a couple of years. I will do anything to make sure that they're delighted, not satisfied. If you get the wrong match, you can work all night, give blood, give superb advice, and if they don't run with it, then 3 months later they're like, "Oh, we hired that expensive consultant, Val Jones, and she didn't do anything. She's terrible." And that can spread really, really widely. Whereas if you pick the right client and you've done your homework and it seems like a strong match, you can work all night, you can give blood, you can give them superb advice, and they run with it, and suddenly you're brilliant.
And you're energized.
Yes.
Because it
I'm
really
too
helps
old
you
to waste
too.
my time with people who really don't want to do the hard work. So anyway, so I think that you might think, especially if you're hungry and especially if you're starting out, oh, I just have to take any client, but it could ruin your whole business from the beginning if you pick the wrong client.
Right. Not only from their point of view, but from your point of view and your attitude coming into the next client.
Right. Yeah. And also, having that network. You said, where do your clients come from?
Right.
Sometimes I just have to go out and have lunch with people.
Right.
It's because if you're not in, you can have a lot of good friends and colleagues, but if you're not actually talking about them, they might go, "Oh, wait, you mean you do strategic planning too?"
Yeah.
Or, "Oh, I thought you only did sponsorship." And it's we've been friends for 20 years and you don't know what I do. No, it's not their job to know.
Right.
So really often just going out for breakfast and lunch for a couple of weeks, I end up having all the business I need.
So you connect the dots for people.
Yeah, it's just like, it's not their job to figure it out.
Right,
you know.
right.
That's another, in terms of one thing I did learn early on was, like after a couple of years, you know, it's very diligent and everything, so I decided I'd do a survey of my clients, you know, and I actually hired somebody else to do it, and, you know, had them say, like, you know, and one of the early questions was, what services did VMJA provide, and the quality and the timeliness, and, you know, if you could, what was the best thing, all that stuff. So what I found was that, like, out of 20 clients, maybe, like 2 could say what services I had actually provided.
Oh.
So the light bulb went off, and I realized it's not their job even to know what the basic message is. Not, do I need this or do I need this? It's like 1-800, call Val if you need money.
Right.
You know, just call, if you need money, call Val. And then I'll figure out, you know, is it me that you need or something else?
Yeah.
This is the kind of service you need to get to where you want. You haven't figured out what you want. Well, this is what, you know, this could mean for you. But it's not their job. I'm successful if people are thinking, oh, if I need money and I'm a nonprofit, I should call Val. If they're a hospital, I can refer them to somebody else.
Right.
But don't assume that your clients, even people you've worked with for a while, have a clue what you've done for them.
That's really important.
Yeah,
advice.
that was a surprise for me. I was really, I was like, how is this possible? You know, and then I thought I needed to educate them, and then I was like, oh, you're an idiot, you know.
So now you brought up something else, though, in that little second there, was hiring other people to help you. So, and I think you've done this, right? You bring in people all the time to work with you, not just other professionals to collaborate with, but I know you've had interns.
Yes.
You have
Staff.
other staff, right?
Yeah.
So where's that decision point? How does that work? When did you decide, or how did you decide, yeah, you know, it's not worth my time, I need to bring somebody else in? And then how do you, and somebody I'm sure looking at this would say, well, how do you afford that?
Right. So I think it's the biggest way to go under is to hiring people, and beyond that, hiring friends and family is really going to kill you.
Yeah. Okay.
So like, I made mistakes. I'm a tender heart. All my friends are wonderful. All my family is brilliant. You know, blah blah blah. But you really have to make sure that it's worth it. And when I started out a long time ago, outsourcing wasn't as common as it is now. Yeah. So almost everybody is outsourced. Also, it's a real big difference between having staff and the amount of paperwork you have to do, and withholding and all that sort of stuff for a boutique firm versus outsourcing or contracting for stuff. Gotcha. So if you're going to do it, doing payroll for 1 or 2 people is a real pain in the butt.
Yeah,
you know,
that's a
like
challenge.
It's a huge amount of work for
plus
not
the
so
expense
much.
with insurance and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Too. So when you're starting out, and also, I mean, some people might want to grow a big firm. Part of the reason why I got into this was not only that I was a little tired of the cycle, but because when I had a staff of 20, I almost never got to work with donors or work with the executive directors or the program people or the board members. That's what I love. Yeah. So I didn't want to create a company where I wouldn't get to do, again, the stuff that I really love. And if you're heading, you know, even a mid-sized firm, you're spending most of your time, you know, getting the business. And feeding the machine of all the people working behind you, which is fine. And I actually love selling. It's just like trying on clothes. You're like, oh, well, how would I look in this company, you know? Or I really like this little boutique environmental thing on the river, you know? But it's not that I don't love selling, because I love it, but just if that's all I do, I don't get to do the other stuff. Yeah. So we have what I call a boutique firm, which means that, you know, there's a core team that works together, but, you know, not all of my clients need a government relations guy. Right. But when they do, then I can bring Conrad in, who's like one of the best in the city. Sure. You know, I think, and know that they'll get it. But otherwise, the client is paying for all those people all the time. Right. And that's not really necessary. And that's, you know, so by like from theater, I think of it as casting for a show. Like, you know, maybe you need the lighting designer from the Mark Taper Forum, and the costume guy from here, and this actress, and that production manager. But you don't need to have all those people on the staff of the theater all the time. So I have a balance. Yeah, you know? Right. And I like to cast according to each show. Like each client is like a show, and I'm putting together usually the team. That said, you know, I couldn't do everything I do. A lot of stuff would just get left undone if I didn't have assistants. I also I haven't always stuck to this, but I'm like, I want to help everybody. I'm really friendly and everything. So often I'll have somebody who's an assistant or an admin who is kind of blunt, and is really good at saying no. I'm sorry, Val can't see you. She's on deadline right now. So I don't have to be the bad guy, and everybody knows. Oh, you got to get past Carol if you want to do that.
Yeah, right.
So anyway.
That's like,
because your time is all you have as a consultant, and if you don't protect it, it's really easy to just
it just drains away like water.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time. This has really been good, but is there anything more that you think that people ought to know about the business of consulting to nonprofits?
Well, if you're starting out and you think that you're just a grants writer working in your home office and you don't need to register with the state, you're wrong. And you can pay a penalty of more than $1,000 per state. Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know. Yeah, and specifically, if you are doing fundraising consulting, that's grants writing huge. Is considered. Yeah, right. Well, fundraising consulting. Yes. Like a lot of people. You and I know that, right? Yeah, I know. But I mean, if you're starting out, you might think, "Oh, I'm just writing grants. Mm-hmm. I'm not asking for money." Yeah. And there's different categories in different states for like I'm a fundraising counsel. We do not do fundraising for clients. Versus so we don't solicitor. Ask. Yeah, we're not a solicitor. Right. So, and the most baffling and irritating thing that happened to me when I first started out was that the state doesn't tell you what needs to be in the agreement. Yeah. You have to figure that out yourself. So you definitely want to have some, like do a made up one with some friends or something with a real nonprofit that you're doing pro bono work or something, because getting signatures from a prospective client that you've worked really hard to get for the chair of the board and the executive director, and then have it sent back 3 times because you didn't have the language exactly right, but they won't tell you what it is just bad. So, I mean, this is like brain dead simple, but a lot of people starting out don't know, or they think, oh, well, I'm going to build a consulting firm, but right now I'm just doing that. So, and knowing which states require which stuff, because each state is different. Yeah, and we're starting to have some, like there's one for the 5 Mid-Atlantic states now, and they're talking about one for nationwide. But, and also some people starting out might think that, well, I need one for church, but you don't. Yeah. Right. In some states. So, it's like there's, so it's just, so that's really good. Just don't let that lesson be with your first client that you're really excited about. Let it be with, somebody that's like a friend or something. That makes a lot of sense because that's a bad way to start out. Bad way to start. Well, I'm just telling you all the mistakes I made. No, that's great. Yeah, that's great. Anyway, well, Val, this has really been great. Thank you so much for your help with this and being so open and candid. And honestly, I that's one of the reasons I came to you, because I know that you're a candid person. Yes. So no, and that's said for all the right reasons. Right. So, right. But also, I mean, the more that all of us do a good job as consultants, the better the reputation of the field. Yes, exactly. And honestly, I will give people samples of my letters of agreement that pass the state, and even pricing examples, because I want us all to be really good, because one person doing a bad job and letting down clients is really impact to all of us. Well, and that makes headlines first. Yes, right. So let's all do it well, and I'd like to mentor people too. Yeah. So hopefully it helps. Well, thank you so much, Val. You're welcome. All right. This has been Valerie Jones with Valerie M. Jones Consulting.